Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to start by thanking the witnesses for their testimony. The FAFSA form is critical for students from all backgrounds to access federal financial aid and a great college education. My district is home to, I believe, 10 great colleges, universities, and community colleges, and thousands of students who rely on FAFSA every year so that they can attend school, graduate, and help grow our economy. Unfortunately, it's very clear that the Department of Education failed these students last year, as well as parents, financial aid administrators all over the country. And I hope that this committee uses this oversight capacity in a bipartisan manner to ensure that the Education Department does this year. We need to be helping solve the problems, not using this to condemn a department that I suspect was trying its best. With that said, I'd like to ask you both, with regard to the FAFSA delays in the 2024-2025 school year, was the problem fundamentally a technology issue, a leadership issue, or a funding issue? I understand that all three contributed to the problem, but which would you say was the biggest problem? And Ms. Emery Arias, you could go ahead and take that first.
I would say that many of the delays that we identified were due to technical issues. People simply couldn't enter the FAFSA, they couldn't complete it, and then they couldn't get correct estimates. So there were definitely technical issues. I would also say that there were planning issues. The Department of Education underestimated its needs in several areas, including for call center support.
So when there were, let me follow up with you, and then I'll go on to other witnesses. When there were such difficulties, technological issues, people couldn't enter the information, is it fair to assume that they then would pick up the phone and call the call center for help?
Many did. Unfortunately, many got nowhere with that. We had 4 million calls that were unanswered, and people were not able to get the help that they needed.
4 million out of 5.4 million calls went unanswered, and apparently the Department of Education only anticipated 2 million calls. Why was there such an underestimating of the call center needs?
We don't know, but we think that the department needs to plan better going forward.
So one of the things I also noticed in the testimony is that there was a dramatic underestimate of the number of students that would have to be manually verified, that the estimate was 3,500 individuals would have to be manually estimated or manually verified, when in fact there were 219,000 students that needed to be manually verified. So the estimate was off by 98%. How did this happen?
The department simply neglected to include estimates for students in mixed status families. And because of that, they didn't provide enough staffing to do the manual verification, which was incredibly burdensome and difficult for mixed status families.
In prior years, have there been students with mixed status families who've applied tried to fill out the FAFSA forms?
There's a new requirement due to the Future Act and FAFSA simplification for ID verification, and because of that, this was a new process that needed to be done, and the department did not account for that new process or new requirement that those individuals would need to go through verification. And because of that, they vastly underestimated how many people would be needed to process verifications. And because of that, people suffered.
So this was a new requirement. This last year was the first year that would have had to be taken into consideration. So there wasn't a historical model that the Education Department could have gone back to see.
Correct, it was a new requirement.
And when it was determined that things were not working properly, and there were not enough staff to handle the calls, to handle all the other issues, why did the department not hire more people?
I don't know why they didn't hire more people. I know that at a certain point, they just decided to shut it down. They shut down the verification process and suspended it for the current cycle.
Was there funding to hire those additional people they needed?
That's not something that the department raised with us.
So you don't know whether there was funding available?
I do not know. I know that it was a very cumbersome process, even when they had people doing it. It was very difficult. They were sending information to emails and then having challenges with the quality of the documents. The whole process was problematic.
Do you have any idea whether there were people out there who they could have hired who had the skills they would have needed to help deal with the issues that the students and parents were facing?
I would think that they would be able to hire people to look at documents and determine whether they met the qualifications. However, again, their poor planning didn't set them up to do that. Their poor planning put them in a position where they didn't have enough people to do that process. And in the end, they had to abandon it.
Ms. Cruz, Kane, anything you'd like? Am I over my time? I apologize. I was so engrossed in the answers that I did not watch the clock.
Totally understand.
Thank you, and I yield back.
Thank you so much. I'd like now to recognize Ms. Stefani.